What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and this is Does It Suck? The show where we take a deep dive look at a new game and see what's good or bad about it. Now, today we're going to be discussing the first expansion for Diablo IV called the Vessel of Hatred, because I've secretly been playing it for the last week, and I definitely have some thoughts about how different and how improved this is over the original version of Diablo IV. Let's begin with that. If you bought Diablo IV in May of 2023, when it initially launched, it got a tremendous amount of backlash for a bunch of systems that just didn't feel completely fleshed out. A lot of the classes were poorly balanced, items were way overly complicated with a bunch of very useless stats, leveling in general just took way too long. But over the course of the last year, the developers have really been grinding away. They've done multiple seasons now, and I've played all of them. I've actually maxed out every single content patch, every content update, every aspect of it. I very much love Diablo IV. In fact, I've put over 600 hours into it. But with Vessel of Hatred, this is 2.0. They're completely reinventing the game, and I think that most of these changes are better, but some of them I kinda don't like. So let's break it down. Hi, hope you're having a great day, and if you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let me actually just say that the interestingness of Vessel of Hatred is that if you're already playing Diablo IV, a lot of this stuff is free, and that if you have the game, a lot of these changes, these tweaks, these differences to the new version of the game are automatically being applied. But let's start by talking about what specifically you get if you decide as a Diablo IV player to buy Vessel of Hatred. This takes us to a new area, a swamp called Nahantu. Now, this place is a very cool jungle. It's got lots of rivers and new monsters and stuff like that, but it also carries on the story beyond the end credits of Diablo IV. Now, D4's main story is perhaps the part that people have loved the most. The crazy cutscenes, the incredibly good voice acting, and honestly, how dark the story is. But with this expansion, it takes it in a direction that I never could have imagined. Now, I am a Diablo superfan. Not only do I have a Diablo tattoo that takes up my entire arm, I've read the Diablo books, I've beaten all the Diablo games and stuff like that, and what I've noticed is that typically with their tales, they're very much good versus evil, and then everybody walks off into the sunset. Whereas with Vessel of Hatred, it actually explores the concept as to how screwed over people are from the events of the game. Like, there's a major aspect of this, which is about the fact that in the main story of Diablo IV, you fight your way into hell. You literally open up the gates of the underworlds and marched into hell with an entire army. Those soldiers are back. Those soldiers have PTSD. They have literally walked into the mouth of hell, and while they may have won for a bit, the fact that Mephisto is still wandering around, the fact that there are still these great prime evils that could possibly destroy the world, they're deeply messed up. The fact that the story actually explores not just a new area, not just a new zone, but it explores the depths of how much people are messed up by the events of the main campaign. I think that is brilliant. I mean, I had never would have imagined they were going in this direction. Now, I'm not going to spoil it, but the whole idea of chasing down Mephisto and Nyrel and the characters that are kind of still picking up the pieces of the main campaign, it works very, very good. But this does bring me to the first major complaint I have. And I don't have a ton of gripes, but the biggest thing I kind of didn't like is the new zone. So, Nahantu is a cool swamp. If you played Diablo 2, there was the big swamp in that. You know, Act 3 is one big swamp. This is very much making a lot of homages to the effects and craziness of Diablo 2, Act 3, right? So, wandering around in these swamps, getting a chance to kill these monsters, seeing the new stuff, I think it looks okay, but I kind of don't like the fact that it's just right next to the main map. And it's not very big. This new area, this new massive expansion is about 20% the size of the original map. So paying, what is it, $30, $40 for this expansion then in the story itself, it's only like 6.5 hours long, maybe 8 hours long. It just, if you're coming here purely for that new area, there's not a lot. The biggest thing is the completely new invented class, which is the Spiritborn. So for this testing, I've now played about 30 hours of this expansion, I think roughly. And in this, I decided to beat it as the Spiritborn because this is the new class. It is a melee magic user. I almost think of it as like a mix of like a rogue and a mage. And the reason I say that instead of druid is that Spiritborn do channel the magics of nature. They have different stuff that's, it's all focused on different animals. There's the centipede to poison people, the gorilla, which is like your high crit damage. There's the bird and eagle, which I like a lot. Each of these different styles of combat are essentially different styles of combat, and it's how like their specializations work. The Spiritborn is very fun. I've played every class in Diablo IV all the way up to level 100, and this one, I'm glad it feels so different. I think it scales really, really well. As I began to find legendaries and boost my stats and actually mess with stuff, I felt incredibly, incredibly strong. And that brings me to more of the changes that are just part of the base game, which is how this is all being so overhauled for 2.0. I'm going to keep showing gameplay of the Spiritborn, but let's talk about how different it is to power up a character now versus in the original game. So they have lowered the max level from 100 down to 60, but when you hit 60, now your experience bar now becomes your Paragon bar. So every single time you fill up your points at that point, instead of leveling up and getting more talent tree points, now instead you get Paragon points. Originally you leveled to 50 and then you started to get Paragon points, so it made it where now in this new version of the game you get more talent points in general, so you can actually get more skills, you can max out more abilities and stuff like that. But I also just like the fact that, honestly, this shift to making a Paragon priority, I almost want to call it, the fact that you hit max level at 60, and at that point you just keep scaling your Paragon higher and higher and higher. If you have not played the game already, this essentially creates an immense amount of depth. Like, the best part of every Blizzard game, especially World of Warcraft and Diablo, is the character customization, about making it so that your person plays 100% different than everybody else, because these talent trees have all sorts of flat stat bonuses and damage increases and stuff like that. But it is cool that if I want to go bird build or a jaguar build or the gorilla build and stuff like that, I like the fact that every way I choose to play it, especially playing this before launch where I have no strategy guides, I can't like Google the best build. It was cool to experiment with it. And honestly, hitting max level at 60, it feels better, honestly. It just feels like my strength scales much more vertically. But that brings me to the difference they've done with difficulty. So the other primary gripe that everybody, and I mean everybody, completely hated in the original version of the game was capstone dungeons. You'd play the game and there were 4 difficulties. They called it the world tiers: 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 2 were immediately unlocked, and then there was a level 50 dungeon and a level 70 dungeon that by beating them would unlock the harder difficulties. They've gotten rid of that. So now, instead, there's this thing where there's just easy, medium, hard, Pentiment, and then you start to get to the torment difficulties. And the way you unlock these higher level difficulties, the torments ones specifically, is just by doing the pit, which is already an end-game activity. It felt like in the original version of this game, you very much got locked into these lanes. Like, the worst part of Diablo IV was that the content you did to level up, once you got to level 70 or 100 or whatever, you stopped doing the old content. You would just only be doing nightmare dungeons and hell tides and stuff like that. Essentially, the game very much just told you, okay, that old stuff is behind you. In the new version of the game, everything stays relevant forever because all of it gives you gear, all of it gives you gold, all of it gives you experience points for extra Paragon talent points, and I love that. It felt so cool that I could just explore and do stuff in any order I want, or actually just, do what I find to be fun, and no matter what, I'm getting everything from glyphs to experience. Like, I'm glad they're giving us so much freedom to it, and also, if you haven't been playing the game, The game in general is just so much better optimized. They did like this stat squish where there used to be 6 different abilities on every single weapon, which means you'd get like plus to damage, plus to crit, plus to intelligence, plus to this. It was a mess. So they did a season a while back that was just called the Loot Reborn season, which was essentially a patch that completely reworked the stats on gear to be a lot more efficient. And now playing this, honestly, the game is easier to understand. It just, every part of this is not only more fun, but it's just simpler. You know, it's more about killing and having fun. With action RPGs, stuff like this, the glory of it is always rushing into battle or teaming up with people and having fun. It's not about sitting there in town staring at 18 different stat points on every single piece of gear after every single dungeon. They have sped it up in the best way possible, but let's talk about the completely new dungeons they've invented for this and rune words. So this is a cool mechanic where now, if you played the older Diablos, there used to be these things that were like Stone of Jordans and stuff like that. There were these special runes you could put into socket slots. They brought that back. Now, the way this works is you get top pieces and bottom pieces. You can only put this in pieces of gear that are actually 2 slotted, double slot pieces of gear, and it's essentially you're choosing what the effect of the rune would be and what triggers it. So like at one point I made it so that every time I crit, I get extra mana. So if I was really blowing people up, if I was really landing a lot of Great Eagle crits, I would get pretty much infinite casting ability. So I like this kind of thing because it does feel good, but I really don't fully understand rune words yet. With a lot of stuff in Diablo IV, there's always like that optimal route. There is always that thing of like, here's the correct way to play. And I like rune words, but it definitely seems like there is some stuff that is drastically better than others. We'll see how it actually tunes out. I think rune words are interesting, but I guess I don't fully grasp it yet. I mean, standard gems are already so strong because those will give you extra vulnerable damage or more stat and stuff like that, extra health. It doesn't really feel like rune words are that valuable yet, but maybe once I start to grind more, it'll start to click together. So they also added a party finder. They did some stat where they found out that like 85% of people in Diablo 4 were playing it completely by themselves. They never teamed up. They never did anything. They never saw anybody. They never joined a clan. And the developers were like, okay, that's not really the point. This is supposed to be basically an MMORPG light. It is supposed to be a game that has big, crazy, epic world bosses and stuff like that, but you're also supposed to make friends and log in and see other people in town. So they added in a party finder. I haven't been able to test this because obviously I'm playing it before the game is out, and the other journalists, I think, just don't party up very often, but it essentially lets you find people to play with for activities. You can say what you're looking for, whether it is a quest or dungeoning or just power leveling, and I think that is a very good mechanic. Now, they added in 2 dungeons, which you can also search in the party finder. So if you want to actually do these, one of them requires a party. I did not get a chance to test it. So the one you can do completely by yourself is called the Kurost Undercity, and it's pretty cool. It's like a timed dungeon where they give you a very, very short amount of time, like 60 seconds, but every time you kill monsters, your time goes up. If you manage to survive through all of it, you get some crazy bonuses. Even if you don't finish it, they actually give you a huge, huge payload of gear. It's a really cool system in general. I actually think Kurost Undercity is the one I really want to mess with a lot, but the one I didn't get a chance to test at all is the Dark Citadel. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not sure it's even in this preview build. I couldn't even find out where it was, but obviously I didn't see everything. I saw a lot, but I didn't see everything. This is a group required dungeon. You cannot do it by yourself. I am super curious. I purposely stopped playing at 30 hours. I could play more. I've got more time to play it, but I actually stopped because I am buying it. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I love Diablo 4. I am paying $40 for the expansion, and I want to test out the group dungeon with my buddies, with my real life friends I play the game with, and a bunch of my guild members and stuff like that. I run a guild in Diablo 4 called Big Critties. I want to test out the Dark Citadel with my squad, with my buddies in voice chat, and see how good or bad it goes. I think this expansion is good. I still feel like it does seem a little bit expensive for how tiny the Nahantu map is. I like the nostalgic music. I like the fact that we have mercenaries now. You can actually get these like NPC helpers. So if you're playing solo, if you join a party, you can't have mercenaries. I don't think, at least, obviously I didn't party up, so I'm not sure. But mercenaries are like recruitable NPCs that have specific abilities and talent trees. And the more you play with them, the more they can be customized. That's cool. But all of this still feels a little bit smaller than I probably hoped. I was personally hoping that this new expansion would take us someplace else, someplace far away, someplace different. The fact that it does feel like we're just going to this like tiny swamp that's been next to the map all along, it definitely doesn't feel that impressive. Maybe that's just me. I'm just saying that as a person that is not only beating it, not only playing it, not only loving it, it does feel tiny. And I feel like tiny is not a good feeling in an MMO. But maybe my mind will change after I put another 100 hours into it. But what do you guys think about Vessel of Hatred? Are you excited for it? Are you buying it? Or does this seem like a big old nothing burger? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.